Hey, what's up, y'all? My name is Stevie Matt, and today I'll be discussing Raising Dion, a Netflix original series that hit the platform in 2019. It was created by Carol Barbie and is based on a comic of the same name written by Dennis Liu. And it is one of the best written shows I have seen in a while. Welcome to It's Not That Deep. Before I even get into the show, though, I have to acknowledge the shadow cast over its announcement. So again, it is based off a comic, and the creators of the comic actually dropped a full movie trailer for the comic when it was released 5 years ago. And in the trailer, it featured dark-skinned leads for both Nicole and Dion. Fast forward to the news that it was picked up to be a series that was being produced by Michael B. Jordan, and when the trailer for that series dropped, there was a huge, disappointing change. Nicole and Dion were now noticeably lighter. Much lighter. It was met with tons of backlash, and rightfully so, for obvious reasons. Colorism has been an ongoing problem in Hollywood, and this instance in particularly stung because we all got excited for this show expecting a dark-skinned lead. It goes quiet for a few years, and then when it comes back, boom, light bright. If it had started with a light actress, there still would have been an issue of yet another Netflix show starring a light-skinned actress. But this instance, this switcheroo felt particularly egregious, right? And so I would not be surprised in the least if that killed all the goodwill this show had and it just did not perform well. And they brought that on themselves, really. But it's so unfortunate that they made such a crucial mistake because outside of that, the show has some of the best writing I've seen in a while. The pacing is excellent, the characters are so well developed, and I was really just blown away with it on pretty much every other level. And the last thing I honestly expected this show to be about was fucking Nice Guys. And it handled it so well, I feel like. It made a very solid, concerted effort to illustrate how nice guys, TM, can and will turn absolutely murderous when they get rejected. The one girl lays it out crystal clear for Pat when she says, you come on so strong, but when things aren't exactly the way you want, you go nuts. And there it is. After coming on far too strong, ignoring all boundaries to force his niceness onto a woman, the nice guy then gets mad when the girl then turns around and is like, nah, but I'm good though. He is doing all the things that he's doing because he assumes that it's what she wants, never listening, and when she says, no, this is not what I want, he gets mad because her agency was never factored into the equation. The movies, the media, white supremacy, patriarchy, all of these things told him that if he just did things a certain way, he could get the girl that he wanted. And so when that entitlement that he's now internalized gets challenged, he snaps. And like, holy fucking shit, I'm just blown away because who knew this show was gonna go there? When I first clocked that Pat was one of those, socially awkward and very inept nerd bros, this was actually my first line of thought, but then I, pulled it back and was like, no, they're probably just gonna illustrate him at face value, as awkward but ultimately lovable and harmless. But no, they actually took it there. And shout out to Jason Ritter. He did a phenomenal job. It was the nervous tics for me, the visible restraint, where it seems like he is just always holding back the beast, and I've met a lot of guys like this. Unfortunately, you come across them in nerd spaces. It's why I hate nerds. That's how so many of them are, right? Like, they are always holding on to this facade of nice and reasonable, but underneath they really just want things their way, and they have to say the things that they want to say, but you can just kind of tell that they are ready to snap and go off at any given moment, and so it's just, all of it comes out very strained. And he captured that essence just so very well, so big ups to him. The other thing that blew me away about this show was the pacing. They balanced Nicole and Dion's lives, both as a mother-son duo as well as individual people, so well. And then you throw the supernatural stuff on top of that, and then even the peripheral characters get appropriate space for development so that everyone feels real. With stories like this, sometimes it's about the parent, so the kid kind of gets treated as like a plot device or a vehicle that just affects tension and conflict in the parent's life. They're not really a character all on their own. But then sometimes, it's about the kid. So the parent gets that treatment, just a plot device. Here, though, you have their relationship, but then each of them get rich interiority outside of each other in a way that's not tied to the loss of Mark either. So Nicole doesn't just grieve Mark when Dion's not around. You know, she is also trying to find her way back to dancing, which is her true passion, and she builds relationships with her new coworkers at her new job, which is also a thing, and these are also old friends of hers from her dance days. And then she's also building a relationship with the neighbor, in her new apartment, who had, another black woman with a son of her own, and they instantly build community. And I really hope we get more of Tessa and Malik, though, because they are so great. And then Dion isn't just, a superpowered kid. He also wants to find friends, and he's in that stage where he's looking to build friendships outside of the home. And so he builds relationships with the different kids in his school, and those take their own twists and turns along the way. And Josiah Young, the young newcomer who plays Dion, is already so talented. He is so good. He has really gotten down the how to communicate emotion through both his face and body without overdoing it, without doing it the Disney way. It's a very natural, he is dramatic, but in a natural 8-year-old way, where some stuff is over dramatized just because he's an 8-year-old, not because he's overacting. And he finds that balance really well for his age. He's awesome. And all of these separate moments weave in and out of the main plot where necessary, so that it always feels cohesive, but that it never moves too fast, but also doesn't move too slow. Characters are developed, the plot chugs along, and yet each character is granted these necessary moments of levity that allows them and the plot to breathe a little bit, so that there's just this really good balance of peaks and valleys in tension and conflict and release. And that final confrontation, though, child, Pat's turn was absolutely terrifying, because incels like him get absolutely ruthless when they don't get what they want and they finally decide to snap. And watching him manipulate Dion in those final sections was just, disgusting. He was really just going to gross. I hate him now. But, and this is a very big thing for me, I'll talk about this a lot, I'm very glad that both Nicole and Dion got to team up to deliver that final blow, with Jonathan and Esperanza helping out. Again, their Storm Killer science project turned out to be another red herring, because I was legit sitting there watch them end up using that thing to fight him, or at least that concept, and then Suzanne brought it up and she was like, I did it first, and that was really funny. But no, it turns out to be a lightning rod that does the trick, and it's Nicole's quick thinking that gets them there, and then Dion comes in for the alley-oop to deliver that final blow. It is just very important for me that characters get to confront and defeat the antagonists of their own story threads, be it the main characters like this show here. I talked about it with Watchmen, with Angela and Will not being able to confront their main antagonists and the thing that caused all the conflict in their story, but also with even supporting characters, so like Zuko in The Last Airbender. It will forever bug me that him and Azula are positioned in the narrative as foils, so that she's not just one of the show's main villains, but she's the antagonist of his story, and yet it's Katara that actually finally takes her down. It just feels like cheating the character out of the conclusion of their own story. And it was vital here to include Nicole rather than just have her on the sidelines, kind of crying in concern and fear for her son, just because she's not the one with superpowers. This is both Nicole and Dion's story. So I think it's very important that they were able to team up to defeat the final boss together. And that's what I mean about cohesion. Major things like that are tied up very cleanly, but even smaller elements that pop up as the story progresses do not get discarded once they serve their initial function to the story. So that hermit crab that Dion saves from the lab turns out to not be a major plot point like the fox is, but it sticks around as his pet. It's never forgotten by the narrative. Nicole is a dancer, and after that scene where she dances on the stage at the Fox Theater for the first time in however long, she is still beaming from that even episodes later. It's a beautiful moment of levity for a very stressed out woman, but the impact of that is felt through the series, from that point onward. Like, her whole energy shifts after that. And then, of course, Brayden. He turns out not to just be a plot device for that episode where he just is a vehicle for getting Charlotte the information she needs to push the plot along, but that tantrum he throws about her not taking him with her turns out to be fuel for him teaming up with Pat's bitch ass and maybe being a villain in the future. Who knows? It's brilliant writing, but also infuriating. You know, that poor kid. But they even do make a point of planting the seed of violent tendencies in Braden when we first meet him. You know, when his dad runs up on that truck and he's like, oh, you should have shot them, you should have killed them. And I'm really hoping that they bring that back in the future. You know, if Braden becomes a major story element later, he probably will, but you never know. But I'm hoping that they find a way to bring his dad back, that maybe talk him down from the ledge or something like that. It was just such a strong moment where Walter chastises him about violence, that they don't use their powers for violence and in bad ways. And so I just really hope they revisit that in the future if they end up continuing Braden down that path. Speaking of things I hope to see in the future, I really appreciate how they ended up bringing Kat closer into the fold. You know, she's a great example of how they take the time to develop even their supporting and peripheral characters. So Kat, like Suzanne, is also very abrasive with Nicole at first, but then it's like, oh, they're sisters with history, so this energy is coming from somewhere. But she was still getting on my goddamn nerves until she finally realized what was going on, and then she fell right in line and had her sisters back. So that was great. And at that moment, when she's joining our little super team here, we're also getting a peek at her interior life, you know, outside of her connection to Nicole and Dion, and that's where we find out that she's queer. So black queerness in this show is not just relegated to a magazine cover that says Black Gay Pride on the wall of Kwame's office, you know, her very catty and very pushy boss. But we're also getting Kat with her girlfriend, explicitly all kissy-kissy. Not for long, though I do hope they revisit that and maybe bring them back together or deal with that more in the future. But hey, black girlfriend. Now, I'm sorry, no shade to interracial relationships in real life. But media is so oversaturated with it, especially when it comes to queer characters, that it really does start to feel like an agenda. So I'm really just over it. So it was great to see two black queer characters in a relationship with each other. So on top of just excellent writing, you also have black queerness just seamlessly integrated into it. And then Esperanza is a disabled child who gradually becomes Dion's best friend. And there's a whole part where Nicole and Charlotte both have to teach him a lesson about respecting her boundaries as a person in a wheelchair. So that this show otherwise is so inclusive really makes the colorist casting even that much more disappointing, right? This show's handling of race and blackness is otherwise so much more authentic than a lot of the other stuff that I'm seeing coming out of what I'm calling this Dear White People era of black storytelling. One of my favorite blogs on film and television, Cinemact, refers to it as being pulled right from the timeline, in that, you know, just you can tell when these writers have scoured black Twitter and just turned all the things that we just randomly talk about, the conversations that we have on there, into dialogue for their show, and it comes out very stilted and unnatural and just very forced. You know, this show, on the other hand, did not feel like that. It all felt very authentic without ever feeling too heavy-handed or too on the nose. And even with them talking to a child directly, we don't get any after-school special style monologues about being black, you know? And while Carol Barbie, the showrunner, is a white lady, many of the writers on the show are themselves black. So again, if this show had just not made that big fuck up with the casting, if they had kept their dark-skinned leads, it would have been a pretty much nearly flawless execution of a show. The only thing I would still say is that it's set in Atlanta. That's a very big thing, and yet I don't really hear any Georgian accents in it. The first time Kwame spoke and I heard the twang on his voice is when I was like, oh yeah, that's right, they are in Georgia, they are in the South. And so there is still that, but in terms of writing, it's a phenomenally put together show. So that's all I got for you today. You know, it is really unfortunate that the show made the choice to lighten its leads after teasing us with dark-skinned leads. And yes, it is a choice, because like I said, they stay scouring our Twitter timelines. They've caught heat about it in the past, and hell, even Michael B. Jordan himself has caught direct heat about this very thing in the past. So they know it's a thing, and so yes, it is a choice. Maybe it's not malicious, but it does reflect a lack of care. And as much as I'd like to see this show succeed simply for being so excellently written, They shot themselves in the foot when they did that. So if that leads to their demise, well, there'll be other shows. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, go ahead and hit that like button to show some love. Feel free to drop a comment down below. And while you're at it, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you never miss another one. Be sure to check out my Twitter and my Ko-fi for more ways to show support and stay up to date. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I'll see you in the next video.